My daughter stood in court, looked me straight in the eyes and said, "She's not stable enough to manage anything anymore." She said it calmly, like she wasn't talking about the woman who worked night shifts to pay for her braces. Like she wasn't talking about the mother who sold her wedding ring so she could finish college. Like she wasn't talking about me. Beside her, my son-in-law adjusted his expensive watch and nodded along while their attorney handed the judge a folder full of lies. 3 signatures, 2 fake medical statements, 1 carefully prepared story about a lonely widow declining mentally. And by 3:17 that afternoon, everything I had built in 41 years was gone. My house, my savings, my late husband's life insurance, even the little beach cottage in Maine where I had planned to spend my final years. My daughter, Claire, didn't cry when the judge signed the order. She smiled. Not a big smile, just enough for me to see it. Then she walked past me in the hallway and whispered, "You should have helped us when we asked nicely." 6 weeks later, I was sleeping in the storage room behind a closed laundromat in Providence, Rhode Island, using my winter coat as a blanket and washing my face in a gas station bathroom before sunrise. I was 64 years old, homeless, hungry, invisible. And the worst part was not that my daughter had taken everything from me. The worst part was that some broken, foolish piece of my heart still wanted to believe she would come back and say she was sorry. She never did. Instead, one rainy Tuesday morning, while I was picking up empty bottles behind a grocery store, a black town car pulled up beside the curb. A man in a navy suit stepped out holding a leather folder. He looked at me like he had been searching for me for a very long time. "Mrs. Eleanor Whittaker?" he asked. No one had called me Mrs. Whittaker in weeks. I almost didn't answer. Then he said the sentence that made the whole world stop moving. "My name is Julian Cross. I was your brother's attorney. He passed away last month, and he left you his entire estate." I stared at him with dirty hands wrapped around a plastic bag full of bottles. "I don't have a brother," I whispered. The man's face softened. "Yes," he said quietly, "you do." Then he opened the folder. "And according to his final will, he left you a house on Nantucket, controlling shares in 3 companies, and a liquid trust worth $32 million. For a moment, I thought I had died behind that grocery store and nobody had told me yet. $32 million. A house, a brother, a life I knew nothing about. But Julian wasn't finished. "There is one condition," he said. Of course there was. People like me do not get rescued without a condition. I looked at him through the rain and waited. Julian lowered his voice. "Before you inherit anything, you have to live in his house for 90 days. During that time, you must read every document he left for you, open every box in his study, and decide whether you want to use the evidence he collected against your daughter." My knees almost gave out. "My daughter?" He nodded. "Your brother knew what Claire was doing before she did it. He tried to stop her." I couldn't breathe. Julian reached into the folder and removed a sealed envelope. My name was written across the front in handwriting I had not seen since I was 17 years old. Eleanor. Just Eleanor. No Mrs. Whittaker. No legal language, just my name. I took the envelope with shaking fingers, and for the first time in 6 weeks, I felt something inside me that was not hunger, fear, or shame. It was smaller than hope, sharper than grief. It was the first spark of rage. My life before the courthouse was simple, but it was mine. That is what people like Claire never understood. They looked at my house and saw old wallpaper, outdated cabinets, a small backyard, a narrow driveway, and furniture I had kept too long because it still worked. I looked at that house and saw every year of my life. I saw my husband, Paul, standing in the kitchen at midnight making pancakes because Claire had a fever and refused soup. I saw the pencil marks on the pantry door where we measured her height every birthday until she turned 13 and said it was embarrassing. I saw the rosebush Paul planted the spring before his diagnosis. I saw the chair by the front window where he sat during chemo, watching the neighborhood kids ride bicycles as if the world had not begun leaving him behind. That house was never just property. It was proof that love had happened there. After Paul died, I worked harder than I should have. I was a claims supervisor for a small insurance office downtown. Not glamorous, not powerful, just steady. I knew policies, forms, dates, signatures, codes. I knew how to read fine print. That is the irony, isn't it? I spent half my career catching fraud in paperwork, and my own daughter still managed to bury me under it. Claire was 36 when it happened. She had always been beautiful in a polished, controlled sort of way. The kind of woman who never looked surprised in photographs. The kind who said, "I'm worried about you," when she meant, "You're becoming inconvenient." As a child, she was sweet. I need you to understand that. People always want villains to be born with sharp teeth. They are not. Claire used to crawl into my lap after nightmares. She used to leave drawings on Paul's pillow when he was sick. She once saved every allowance dollar for 3 months to buy me a blue scar from the church craft fair because she said it matched my eyes. I carried that version of her inside me for years, even after the adult version began cutting me open with polite sentences. Maybe that was my mistake. Maybe mothers do not love the person standing in front of them. Maybe we love every version of that person at once, and that makes us easy to fool. Claire married Martin Hales when she was 29. He was handsome, ambitious, and always smelled faintly of expensive cologne. He worked in commercial real estate, which meant he knew how to say words like opportunity and leverage, while making selfishness sound intelligent. At first, I tried to like him. I invited them over for Sunday dinners. I gave them money for furniture when they bought their first condo. I watched their dog when they travelled. I kept my mouth shut when Claire started speaking to me with Martin's vocabulary. "Mom, you need to think about asset protection." "Mom, you're sitting on equity you don't even use." "Mom, that beach cottage is sentimental, but sentiment doesn't appreciate properly." That cottage. The cottage in Maine was Paul's dream. He bought it before we married, back when it was more rot than house, and spent years fixing it room by room. It had grey shingles, blue shutters, a porch that faced the water, and a kitchen floor that sloped badly toward the back door. Claire always hated it. Too damp, too quiet, too far from good restaurants. But after Paul died, She started asking about it constantly. Are you really going to keep going up there alone? Isn't it expensive to maintain? What if something happens to you there? The phrase, "what if something happens to you," became her favorite key. She used it to unlock every door I tried to keep closed. At first, I thought she was worried. Then I realized worry can become a costume. Underneath hers was appetite. It began with small requests. Access to my online accounts, just in case. A copy of the house deed, for emergency planning. A meeting with a financial advisor Martin knew. I said no, softly at first, then firmly, then less softly. That was when Claire changed strategies. She stopped asking. She started documenting. She came over and took pictures of expired milk in my refrigerator. She wrote down the time I forgot a dentist appointment. She saved a voicemail where I repeated myself because I was tired after a migraine. She turned ordinary aging into evidence. Then came Dr. Feld. I had met him exactly once. Claire insisted he was a geriatric specialist who could help me plan ahead. The appointment lasted 20 minutes. He asked if I knew what year it was. He asked who the president was. He asked me to remember 3 words: apple, penny, table. I remember them because later those 3 stupid words appeared in the report he signed, stating that I showed signs of executive decline and possible early cognitive impairment. Possible. That word destroyed me. Possible became probable. Probable became unsafe. Unsafe became unfit. And unfit became legal permission. By the time I understood what Claire and Martin had built, they already had attorneys. 3 of them. 1 for Claire, 1 for Martin, 1 for the petition. I had a public legal aid appointment scheduled for 2 weeks later. I never got those 2 weeks. The hearing was on a Monday. Rain hit the courthouse windows all morning. I remember because I kept watching it instead of looking at my daughter. The judge reviewed documents. Claire dabbed her eyes at exactly the right moments. Martin placed a hand on her shoulder. Their attorney described me as vulnerable, isolated, resistant to help, financially confused. I tried to speak. I said I was not confused. I said I had paid every bill on time. I said my daughter wanted my property. The judge looked tired. Not cruel, just tired. That was worse somehow. Cruel people enjoy hurting you. Tired people hurt you because you are next on the calendar. When the order went through, Claire became temporary conservator of my estate. Temporary. Another word that ruins lives. Within 10 days, temporary turned into control. My bank cards stopped working. The locks on my house changed. My phone was removed from the family plan. The beach cottage was listed under a liquidity recommendation. I went to the house once, begging to get my clothes. Martin answered the door. He did not let me inside. Claire stood behind him in my hallway, wearing the blue scarf I had given her years ago, the one she bought me as a child. "Please," I said. "I just need my medications." She looked at me with dry eyes. "Martin already dropped your things at the shelter downtown." My things. a garbage bag of clothing, 2 pairs of shoes, a toothbrush. Not my wedding album, not Paul's letters, not the little wooden box where I kept Claire's baby bracelet. Just enough to make abandonment look organized. "You can't do this," I whispered. Claire tilted her head. "Mum, this is exactly why we had to." Martin closed the door. That was the first night I slept outside. For the first few days, I kept thinking it would correct itself. Surely someone would notice. Surely a judge, a clerk, a friend, a neighbor would look at the facts and say, "Wait, this is wrong." But life does not stop for people who fall through it. The world keeps moving. Buses run, coffee shops open, children complain about school. People walk past benches without looking down. I learned where to find public bathrooms that opened early. I learned which church served soup on Thursdays. I learned that cold seeps upward from concrete into your bones until you feel older than any age you have ever been. I learned that hunger changes your thoughts. It makes them narrow, small, practical. Where can I sit? Where can I wash? How long until dark? Can I make $3 last 2 days? One morning outside a laundromat that had closed for renovations, I found a loose side door and slipped into a storage room that smelled like detergent and dust. I slept there for 9 nights. On the 10th, the owner found me. He was a tired-looking man with paint on his jeans. I expected shouting. Instead, he looked at my face, then at the trash bag beside me, and sighed. "You can't stay here," he said. "I know." He rubbed the back of his neck. Then he handed me a $20 bill. "I'm sorry." I almost cried because he was kind while removing me. Kindness is sometimes more painful than cruelty, because it reminds you what you were starving for. By the 6th week, I had stopped checking my old street. That was progress, I suppose. I no longer walked past my house hoping Claire might see me. I no longer imagined her running down the steps crying, saying she had made a terrible mistake. Instead, I collected bottles behind stores and returned them for nickels. That was where Julian Cross found me, behind a grocery store loading dock, in the rain, carrying a plastic bag full of bottles and wearing a coat that smelled like damp wool and street corners. He looked like a man from another life. Clean shoes, pressed suit, umbrella. The kind of person I used to avoid when I felt ashamed of what I had become. "Mrs. Eleanor Whittaker?" he asked. I almost lied. There is a strange instinct among people who have lost everything. You begin hiding from your own name. "Yes," I said finally. He closed the umbrella and held it over both of us. That small gesture nearly undid me. "My name is Julian Cross. I represent the estate of Thomas Whittaker." The name hit me like a door opening in a house I thought had burned down. Thomas. My brother. I had not said his name out loud in 28 years. Thomas was 3 years older than me. Brilliant. Restless. Impossible. When our parents died, he wanted to sell everything and leave Rhode Island. I wanted to stay, marry Paul, build a life close to what we had known. We fought over the house, the furniture, the old debts, and things that were never really about any of those. The last thing I said to him was, "Go then. You were always good at leaving." He did. He built hotels first, then parking garages, then a development company. I saw his name sometimes in business magazines at the dentist's office. Thomas Whitaker acquires downtown portfolio. Whitaker Holdings expands into Boston. Philanthropist Thomas Whitaker donates to Maritime Museum. Philanthropist. That word always made me bitter. He could donate to museums, but not call his sister. Except now Julian stood in front of me in the rain, saying he had left me everything. Why? I asked. It was not the question Julian expected. He blinked. Why what? Why now? Julian's face softened. Because he ran out of time. He took me to his car, but I refused to get in until he let me keep the bag of bottles. He did not argue. He placed it carefully in the trunk as if it were luggage. That was the first reason I trusted him. The second was that he did not ask me what happened. He seemed already to know. We drove to a small law office near College Hill, not the polished glass tower I expected. A brick building with ivy along one wall and lamps in the windows. Inside, his assistant brought me tea and a sandwich wrapped in wax paper. I tried to eat slowly. Failed. Julian pretended not to notice. Then he placed the envelope in front of me. Your brother left a letter. I stared at my name. Eleanor. My brother's handwriting had not changed. Sharp letters, heavy pressure. Like every word had been carved rather than written. My fingers shook as I opened it. Ellie, if Cross found you, then the worst version of my fear came true. I am sorry. Not the decorative kind of sorry people say because death has made them sentimental. The real kind. The kind that comes too late and still needs to be said. I knew Claire was moving against you. I knew Martin had contacted Feld. I knew there were filings being prepared. I sent warnings through channels that failed you. Then I got sick faster than expected, and by the time I realized how little time I had left, I could only build the trap after the damage. I read that sentence 3 times. The trap. Julian waited silently. I continued. I am leaving you my estate, but not because money fixes betrayal. It doesn't. Money can buy doors, lawyers, doctors, food, warmth. It cannot return a daughter's heart to the place it belonged. I know you, Ellie. You will want to forgive Claire before you understand what she did. You will blame Martin. You will blame paperwork. You will blame yourself. You will call it misunderstanding because calling it evil would feel like losing your child twice. So I made it impossible for you to run from the truth. You will live at Greyhaven House for 90 days. You will open the study. You will read everything I collected. You will hear their voices. You will see their signatures. You will understand that what happened to you was not an accident. At the end of 90 days, the estate becomes yours fully. Before that, Cross will protect you. If you walk away, everything goes to medical debt relief charities. I hope you don't walk away. Not because I care about the money, because I want my sister back from the people who buried her while she was still breathing. I stopped reading. My throat closed. Julian pushed a box of tissues toward me. I did not take one. Not yet. There was one more page. Do you remember the summer you were 14 and I broke Mr. Alvarez's greenhouse window? You took the blame because I had already been in trouble twice that month. You said, "He'll believe it if I say it was me." I let you. I have regretted that for 50 years. This is me finally telling the truth. You were never weak. You were loyal, and some people mistake loyalty for permission. Do not let them. Come home, Ellie. Thomas. That was when I cried. Not delicate tears, not movie tears, the kind that bend your spine. I cried for the house I lost, for Paul, for my daughter, for the brother I had hated because missing him hurt too much. And when the crying stopped, the room felt strangely clear. What happens now? I asked. Julian opened another folder. Now I take you to Greyhaven. Greyhaven House was on the coast outside Newport, hidden behind black iron gates and a road lined with wind-bent trees. The ocean appeared before the house did, dark blue, restless, cold. Then the mansion came into view, and I understood immediately why Thomas had never come home. He had built one large enough to hold all his loneliness. Greyhaven was stone and glass, 3 stories high, facing the water like it was waiting for war. It had wide steps, heavy doors, and tall windows that reflected the grey afternoon sky. I stood in the driveway holding my plastic bag of bottles and felt absurd. Julian stood beside me. Your brother lived here for 21 years. Alone? Mostly. That word held more grief than I expected. Inside, the house smelled faintly of cedar, paper, and salt air. Everything was clean, but not lifeless. A pair of reading glasses rested on a table near the front window. A navy sweater hung over the back of a chair. There were books everywhere. History, architecture, maritime law, cookbooks with little paper tabs sticking out. He cooked, I asked. Badly, Julian said. I almost smiled. He showed me the kitchen, the bedroom prepared for me, the laundry room, the pantry stocked with food. I did not know how to walk through abundance after 6 weeks of counting coins. Every room felt too much, too clean, too quiet, too undeserved. Mrs. Whittaker, Julian said gently, there is one more thing you should know before I leave. I looked at him. Claire knows. My body went cold.
About the estate?
Yes.
How?
She filed an emergency notice yesterday claiming that as your conservator, she has authority over any inheritance you receive. I laughed once. It sounded nothing like me. She took everything, and now she wants this too. Julian's face hardened. Yes. Can she? No. He said it so firmly I almost believed him immediately. Your brother anticipated that. The estate remains in protective trust during the 90-day condition. Claire has no authority over it, no access, no right to enter the property. But she will try. I looked toward the front door. Julian followed my gaze. There is security, cameras, a gate system, staff on call, and me. I nodded, but fear had already entered the house. The old fear, the one Claire built. The fear of papers, signatures, judges, rooms where people decide your life while you sit there trying not to shake. Julian placed a card on the kitchen island. Call me for anything. Tonight, eat, shower, sleep. Tomorrow, if you're ready, you open the study. After he left, I stood alone in the kitchen for a long time. The refrigerator hummed softly. The ocean hit rocks somewhere beyond the windows. I opened the pantry. Bread, soup, tea, crackers, peanut butter. Ordinary things. Miraculous things. I made myself tomato soup and toast and ate at the kitchen counter because the dining room felt too formal for a woman who still had street dirt under her nails. Then I took the longest shower of my life. I watched grey water swirl down the drain. I washed my hair twice. I scrubbed my hands until my skin turned pink. When I stepped out, there were clean clothes folded on the bed. Not fancy. Soft. Practical. My size. Julian's assistant, probably. Or Thomas. Maybe he had left instructions for everything. I put them on and stood in front of the mirror. For 6 weeks, I had avoided my reflection whenever possible. Now I looked. My face was thinner, my eyes older, my hair more silver than I remembered. But I was there. Under the exhaustion, under the humiliation, under the ruin. Still there. That night I slept in a bed facing the ocean. I woke twice thinking someone was taking my shoes. The third time I sat up and cried because my shoes were beside the bed, dry and safe. Morning came pale and quiet. I made coffee, bad coffee. Thomas and I had that in common, apparently. Then I climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor. Julian had shown me the study door the night before. Dark wood, brass handle, a small keypad beside the frame. The code was in Thomas's letter. Our mother's birthday, of course. My finger hovered over the numbers. I thought of Claire in court. I thought of Martin at my door. I thought of the blue scarf around my daughter's neck. Then I entered the code. The lock clicked. Inside was the truth. The study was larger than my old living room. Tall shelves, a desk facing the sea, a fireplace, and against the far wall, a row of white archive boxes labelled in black ink. Claire, Martin, Feld, Court, Banks, Property, Audio, Video, Timeline. My knees weakened. Thomas had not collected evidence. He had built a war room. On the desk sat a small tape recorder, a sealed note, and a photograph. The photograph was old. Me and Thomas as children on the beach, standing barefoot beside a crooked sandcastle. He was laughing, I was scowling. On the back he had written, "Before we learned how to leave each other." I sat down. For a while I touched nothing. Then I opened the note. Start with the timeline. So I did. Box by box, page by page. My daughter's betrayal became less like a wound and more like architecture. Planned, measured, built. There were emails between Martin and Dr. Feld, payment records, draft petitions, notes from a private investigator Thomas had hired, photos of Claire entering legal offices months before she ever said she was worried, bank statements showing consultation fees. A transcript from a phone call between Martin and one of the attorneys.
She won't fight hard, Martin said. She's emotionally dependent on Claire. That's the pressure point.
I stopped breathing. The pressure point. That was what I had been. Not a mother. Not a person. A pressure point. Then Claire's voice appeared in another transcript. She'll sign if I cry. She always does. I pushed the papers away and stood so fast the chair scraped against the floor. I walked to the window. The ocean was violent that morning, white water breaking hard against black rocks. I wanted to hate her. I tried. But memory is cruel. It brought me Claire at 5, asleep with a fever. Claire at 12, refusing to let me brush her hair, but secretly wanting me to. Claire at 21, hugging me after graduation. Claire at 36, telling a judge I was not safe to manage my own life. I pressed my hand against the glass. "What happened to you?" I whispered, but the room did not answer. The doorbell did. Once, long, hard. My whole body tightened. I went downstairs slowly and looked at the security monitor near the front door. Claire stood at the gate, Martin beside her, their black SUV idling behind them. She wore a camel coat, perfect makeup, and the expression of a daughter who would come to collect something she believed was already hers. Martin leaned toward the intercom. "Eleanor," he said, as if we were equals, "open the gate." I did not move. Claire stepped forward. "Mum, this is ridiculous. We know you're inside." Her voice cracked slightly on Mum. She knew how to use that word. My hand hovered near the intercom button. Then I remembered Thomas's letter. "You will want to forgive Claire before you understand what she did." I pressed the button. "My attorney told you not to come here." Claire looked up at the camera. Her face changed. Not much. Enough. "Mum, we're worried about you." There it was again. Worry. That costume. Martin folded his arms. "You are currently residing in an estate asset that may fall under Claire's conservatorship authority. We need to discuss this before things become more difficult." I almost laughed. "You made me homeless." Claire flinched. Martin did not. "That is not fair," he said. "You were placed in temporary transition while legal matters stabilized." Temporary transition. That was what he called sleeping behind a laundromat. I looked at my daughter. "Did you know where I was?" Silence. The ocean roared behind the house. Claire looked away first. That answered me. I should have broken then. Maybe the old me would have. Instead, something inside me went still. "You have 10 seconds to leave before I call security." Claire's head snapped back. "Mom!" 9. Martin stepped closer to the gate. "Don't be dramatic." 8. Claire's face flushed. "We're trying to help you." 7. Martin grabbed her arm. "Claire, let's go." She pulled away, but not hard. Not really. She was angry, but she was also afraid. Good. They got in the SUV before I reached 5. I watched them reverse down the drive and disappear behind the trees. Then I slid down the wall beside the monitor and sat on the floor. My hands shook. My mouth was dry. But I had not opened the gate. That was the first victory. Small, silent. Mine. When Julian arrived an hour later, I was back in the study reading the next box. He took one look at my face and said, "They came." "Yes." "Did you let them in?" "No." Something like pride crossed his face. "Good." I looked down at the transcript in my hands. "Did Thomas hear these recordings?" Julian nodded. "Most of them." "He knew?" "Yes." "And he still made me read them?" Julian sat across from me. "He wanted you to have more than belief. He wanted you to have proof." I swallowed. "Proof hurts." "Yes," he said. "But it also holds up in court." That was the first time I smiled. Not because anything was funny, because somewhere inside the rubble of me, the woman who had spent 31 years reading claims documents woke up. Proof. Documents. Dates. Signatures. Fraud. I understood those things. Claire had turned my own life into a file. Fine. Now I would finish the file. By the end of the first week at Greyhaven, I had created a complete timeline. Not emotional. Factual. Claire's first request for account access. Martin's first email to Feld. The legal consultation. The false evaluation. The petition. The hearing. The asset transfer. The lock change. The listing of the main cottage. The bank withdrawals after the order. Everything. At night, I walked through the house, learning Thomas by what he had left behind. He had kept old postcards I sent him before our fight. He had circled my name in newspaper clippings when I was promoted at the insurance office. He had a file labelled Ellie, Good Things. Inside were tiny records of my life. A community nursing fundraiser where I volunteered. A photo from Claire's college graduation, where I stood in the background. A church bulletin mentioning my retirement party. He had watched from afar. Badly, silently. But he had watched. I did not know what to do with that. Love that arrives too late is still love, but it cannot undo the years it missed. On the 10th day, Julian brought news. Claire filed another motion. I was in the kitchen making tea. Of course she did. She is claiming you are being manipulated by me and by the estate condition. I set the kettle down. Can she win? No. But she is escalating. I looked toward the front windows, beyond them to the long drive. What does that mean? Julian hesitated. It means we should prepare for her to make this public. I thought of Claire crying in court. Claire telling a judge I was unstable. Claire telling the world I was confused, manipulated, unsafe. For the first time, fear did not come alone. Anger walked beside it.
"Let her," I said. Julian studied me. "You mean that?" I looked at the timeline spread across the kitchen table. Yes, because Thomas was right. The strength had not disappeared. It had only been buried. And Claire, my beautiful daughter with her perfect coat and practiced tears, had made one mistake. She thought I was still under the dirt.